Wow, what a trade deadline. We're going to talk about the Phillies specifically, but I just want to start out with shout out to the MLB trade deadline. That was a whirlwind. So many crazy moves happened. So I'm only going to be going over the Phillies, but check out all of the moves that went down because it was an insane 24 hours. That was a wild ride. I think that the MLB trade deadline is the best one because it's the most impactful. The NBA, NFL have moves that happen, but I think the MLB one carries the most weight. And as we saw this year, has probably the most insanity because that was amazing. So many quality players got moved, and I think prospects are actually probably a big part of why the MLB trade deadline is so much better. The NFL, NBA, you don't really have prospects being moved like this. There's not that level of mystery and intrigue, or even just flexibility with rosters. They don't have as many players to deal. MLB teams have so many players to deal. They have a whole farm system. So that was quite a time. I very much enjoyed watching all of these crazy moves go down. It had been a couple of years since we had an insane trade deadline like this. The last 3 years, I think, were pretty tame. 2021 was the last crazy one. This one brought the MLB trade deadline back into its glory. So that was a time. Let's get into the Phillies specifically, though. That's what we're here for. I just wanted to shout out the majors as a whole. What a time for baseball. It's the end of July. We're going into August. Teams now have basically their rosters pretty much set. We're into the playoff push. It's a great time. So the Phillies specifically. The Phillies made 2 trades at this deadline. Some people are happy with that amount. Some people are not. We'll get into it. The way I'm going to approach it is we're going to look at the best case and worst case scenario for both of these deals, the outcomes for the Phillies. What's the best case of the Johan Duran deal, and what's the worst case? What's the best case of the Harrison Bader deal, and what's the worst case? So let's start with the trade that happened first. The Phillies acquire Twins closer Johan Duran. They give up Mick Abel and Eduardo Tait, a large haul because those two are both MLB top 100 prospects, but they gave up a lot because they get a lot. They get an elite closer, Johan Duran, who throws 100 miles an hour and also has a split finger sinker called a splinker that averages 98 miles an hour and just has great movement on his pitches, dominant closer, one of the elite ones in the game. And he's not a regular rental. Most of the time during the trade deadline, you're getting guys. The reason teams often trade at the trade deadline is because they're not good and they're not going to make the playoffs, and they have guys with expiring contracts. So they get rid of them because then they can at least get some prospects back because they're not going to win anything. So why would they keep this guy and then just lose him at the end of the year? So they get some value from it. That's normal rental. Duran is not a rental. He will be under contract with the Phillies for the rest of this year, all of 2026, and all of 2027. So you get 2.5 years. You get 3 potential playoff runs with him. So that's extra value. You're getting all those years. So they had to give up more prospect capital to get him. So that's the setup. That's why they gave up a lot. They did give up a lot. I gave an instant reaction to this on socials, and a lot of people were like, they didn't give up a lot. Abel's not that good. Tait is far away. One, it's impossible to know with prospects. I would just say objectively, you give up 2 MLB top 100 prospects. That's a lot. That is a large amount of value to give. Now, with prospects, just because they're top 100 prospects doesn't mean they'll pan out, but we don't know. It's so hard to project prospects, which is why often it's, especially if you're a winning team, it's safer to just get major league talent because you don't know what your prospects are going to turn into. Anyway, that could be a whole separate video. Mick Abel has shown flashes. It looks like he can be a quality major league starter. He doesn't have a crazy high ceiling, is basically what the projections are for him, but he can be a solid middle of the rotation guy. So the Twins are getting a major league starter essentially who is under contract for many years. I don't know when he hits arbitration, but like say they get 5 years of Mick Abel, you get a long time. And then they get catching prospect Eduardo Tait, who has a crazy high ceiling, but he's only 18. So it made sense for the Phillies to deal him because by the time he's good and major league ready, they're way past the window that they're in right now. And in return, the Phillies get an absolute beast in the bullpen. This is the most legit closer that the Phillies have had since Jonathan Papelbon, I would say, in terms of just closer, the title, not necessarily the talent. They've had other talented relievers. Jose Alvarado, obviously very talented. They had a closer in previous years where like they had a guy who was the closer, but this is the best blend of talent and absolutely going to be your ninth inning guy, probably since Jonathan Papelbon, which I would say Johan Durant better than him. So best reliever the Phillies have had in a long, long time. He's going to be electric in Philly. I cannot wait to see what he's like just in the regular season. And then obviously Red October is a whole different level. So that's Johan Durant. That's the surface level. Let's look at the stats of his quick. We're going to go on Baseball Savant here. There's a lot of info here. Basically, red is good. There's a lot of red on here. He throws incredibly hard. So it's very hard to make good contact. So he actually doesn't strike out guys at a crazy high rate. His strikeout, well, that's highlighting the wrong one. That's his whiff. His strikeout rate is above average, but not like insane, 73rd percentile. But what he's really good at is inducing ground balls, which he's in the 99th percentile of, and guys not barreling his pitches, which means they're not like making ideal solid contact, which, you know, goes hand in hand with the ground balls. A lot of times when you hit a ground ball, you did not make great contact. So he's in the 99th percentile for both of those. He's in the 100th percentile for fastball velo because he's just ridiculous. So even though he had, if you hear 100 miles an hour, you think like he's striking guys out left and right, and he's good at striking guys out, but he's not like insane top tier. What he is insane top tier at is not allowing hard hit balls. He's allowed 1 home run all year, which is amazing if you needed reference for that. His ERA is 2. He has been good for a couple of seasons now. He has a little bit of playoff experience. He closed out the first Twins playoff win in over 20 years a couple years ago. So he does have some experience in these types of atmospheres. And it just seems like based on his demeanor, he's a guy who will feed off of Red October as well. So those are some of his metrics. That gives you a little bit of his profile, basically what to expect when Johan Durant comes in and pitches for the Phillies. You're going to see him throw really hard, and you're going to see the opposing hitters not be hitting a lot of rockets against him. It's going to be a lot of weak contact and still a decent amount of strikeouts. I don't want it to seem like I'm downplaying the strikeouts. It's just he's in the 90-plus percentile for a lot of things, and he's not for his strikeouts. But he's amazing, and that's why the Phillies gave up a lot to get him. And the Phillies bullpen has been very bad this year. They signed Jordan Romano. That experiment has not worked very well. Basically, their relievers that we trust right now are Strahm and Kerkering. And that's it. Pre the guys that they have now. They brought in David Robertson, who's you're expecting to be a guy that you trust as well. Jose Alvarado would be one of those guys, but he is not eligible for the playoffs because he did PEDs. And now you add Johan Durant, which the bullpen, I just realized I'm not even going into I said I was going to do best case, worst case. I'm trying to set the stage first, setting the stage. The bullpen is fun because when you add a guy to it, it also increases artificially the value of the other guys because then they're in less pressure-filled situations. Like Duran being in the ninth moves everybody up an inning, so then there's less pressure on them. So they might do better because, say, Kerkering is pitching in the seventh instead of the eighth. Stuff like that. It makes everyone else's in the bullpen's lives easier, and that can allow them to perform better. So, context for that trade. Boom. Now, let's get into the best case and the worst case scenario. Best case scenario. Johan Duran continues to be Johan Duran, does what he does, lockdown closer for the Phillies. They go on a playoff run. He pitches great in the playoffs, which is something that the Phillies bullpen did not do last year. Their bullpen, despite being good in the regular season, fell apart against the Mets. Sorry, I haven't been doing videos as much. I gotta get more used to this. I need to stay hydrated. My throat is getting dry. Okay, context all cleared up now. Best case scenario, worst case scenario of the Johan Duran trade. Best case scenario, Johan Duran keeps being who he is, lockdown closer, solidifies the back end of the bullpen for the Phillies. The rest of their bullpen also improves with his addition. They shore up those late innings. They stop blowing so many leads. They go into the playoffs. He's their closer. Is great in the playoffs, which did not happen for the Phillies last year. Even though their bullpen was good in the regular season, they got lit up by the Mets. And then best case scenario, Johan Duran throws the final pitch of the season for the Phillies and gets the final out of the season for them to win the World Series. I guess best case scenario would be that he does it more than once, but we're going to say that he does it this year for them. They brought him in and he gets last out for the Phillies to win the World Series. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario, Duran regresses, which it wouldn't be the first time a reliever has randomly regressed. Relievers are known to be inconsistent. Now, Duran is elite. I'm not saying that I think this is going to happen. I'm just saying worst case scenario, it happens to the best of relievers, basically. Like, it's so hard to have an elite reliever who's elite for their whole career. There's a lot of ups and downs with relievers. So, worst case scenario, Johan Duran regresses, doesn't really help out the Phillies bullpen that much, blows a save or two in the playoffs, and then they don't do that much this year, comes back next year, same thing. Basically, it's going to come down to the playoffs. So worst case scenario is he blows saves in the playoffs because, for example, Carlos Estevez, Phillies added him last year. He was great in the regular season. It was nice to have a closer. It was fun, cool. But then he didn't pitch well against the Mets in the playoffs. So it negated everything. So worst case scenario is Duran does not pitch well in the playoffs. That's what it's going to come down to, really. So, and also Mick Abel ends up being like a borderline ace, maybe a number 2 for the Twins. Tayit, honestly, I mean, it'll hurt if Tayit ends up developing into the top level catcher that we think he could be. If Tayit reaches his ceiling, he's an all-star in the majors. That would hurt. Even if he does develop into that, I don't think Phillies fans should be upset because it's going to be so far in the future. It's not like it's going to happen next year. He's 18. So that's still technically the worst case scenario, but that part of it wouldn't hurt that much. Mick being good would hurt significantly more than Tayit because Mick is 23. He's major league ready. So that would be a worse part of it. But yeah, that's the best case and the worst case. And of course, it always ends up basically in the middle of total best case, total worst case. So I don't know what the middle ground of that is. Probably just that Duran is good for the Phillies. Abel is good for the Twins, and the Phillies don't win a World Series. So it seems like the middle ground of those to me. But best case scenario, worst case scenario, that's what we care about. We need the extremes. All right. And then the second move that the Phillies made, they acquired another Minnesota Twin, Harrison Bader. I know the names of the prospects that got traded, but it doesn't really matter as much as Abel and Tai. The prospects in this one were much more minimal because Bader is a rental. Like I mentioned the rentals before, Bader is a true rental. Phillies will have him for the remainder of this season, so they didn't have to give up as much. And also, no offense to Harrison Bader, he's not the same level that Johan Duran is, so they didn't have to give up as much. But still a very interesting trade. Harrison Bader is an athletic, quick, veteran outfielder. He is not known for his offense. He's having the best offensive season of his career, actually. Primarily a defensive, play hard type of guy. Great guy who you want on your team. I think the Phillies should be glad to have him. Good addition. Not a huge home run move, probably, but a solid addition to a playoff team. He helped the Mets beat the Phillies last year. So he's been a key veteran on teams before, has playoff experience, all that stuff. So that's who Harrison Bader is. There's a lot of different ways that this could go, honestly. So the best case and worst case scenario are going to be interesting because I don't even know exactly how the Phillies are going to use him. That's probably the most interesting part of this is what are the ripple effects of bringing in Harrison Bader? Because now, all of a sudden, Phillies got a lot of outfielders and not a lot of clear, really good ones. So you already had Nick Castellanos, Johan Rojas, Brandon Marsh, Max Kepler, Weston Wilson. Now you bring in Harrison Bader, and he will likely play center because he's the best defensive player of the two. Him and Rojas would be comparable defensively. Maybe Rojas is a little better, but Bader is a significantly better hitter than Rojas, so he takes that one. So you have all of those outfielders. Then you also have Justin Crawford waiting in the wings in AAA, Iron Pigs. He's hitting .330, seems ready for the majors, but seems like the Phillies might not bring him up. Do you bring Justin Crawford up? What happens with Max Kepler, who's been struggling mightily? There's a lot of chain reactions that could happen because of this Harrison Bader move, and I don't know what they are. So we're going to have to wait and find out about those. So best case scenario would be that best case scenario for Harrison Bader individually would be that he becomes one of the more reliable hitters in the Phillies lineup, top 4 or 5 hitters in the Phillies lineup, which statistically he is right now, and we're going to take a look at that at the end of this video, and that he plays solid defense. Basically, that he's just best case scenario for Harrison Bader is he continues being what he's been this year. He's having a career year offensively. He's always going to be great on defense. So basically, best case, Harrison, just keep doing what you're doing. That is the best case scenario for the Phillies. Worst case scenario is this is Austin Hayes 2.0, where they bring in a veteran right-handed outfield bat, and it does not go well, whether it's injuries or just him not performing in general. That would absolutely be the worst case scenario because we just went through that last year, and the Phillies keep bringing in these guys, these veterans, to be a good right-handed bat. And, well, Kepler's a left-handed bat, but either outfielder or right-handed bat, they keep not panning out. So hopefully Harrison Bader does not follow that trend of the Whit Merrifield, Max Kepler, Austin Hayes. We need Harrison Bader to be different. It needs to be different this time. So that would be the worst case scenario if that were to happen. So also just side note, interesting that he played for the Mets last year and helped them beat the Phillies. It's going to take me a minute to get over that because not a fan of those Mets guys from last year for obvious reasons. But once Harrison does like one cool thing for the Phillies, I think that'll help me a lot. Speaking of the Mets, they have been going, or the trade deadline's over. They went blow for blow with the Phillies, which was super interesting. Both teams added big pieces to their bullpen, and then both teams added kind of a flyer center field guy. The Mets got Cedric Mullins, Phillies got Harrison Bader, so barely any separation between the two of them at the top of the NL East. Obviously, they're both trying to win that, and they made similar type moves. So love that battle between the two. It's a fun rivalry. I'm very excited for. I'll have to look into when those two play each other post trade deadline. Hopefully, they have a couple series because I think those are going to be very, very fun down the stretch in this playoff run. So those are the best and worst case scenarios for those two deals. Now I just want to talk about the Phillies in general post trade deadline. We looked at those two deals. Now the Phillies as a whole, my main takeaway from this was kind of unfortunate. I was trying to figure out what we need from these guys because the dialogue on social media is a lot of people don't think the Phillies did enough. They would have liked for the Phillies to get more, especially in the hitting department. Everyone's thrilled we got Duran. That was awesome. Maybe you'd say we need another reliever, but one of the starters is going to go to the bullpen. They should be fine. The main qualm is not getting a really good bat for the lineup. And the more I thought about it, I was trying to think about, do I agree with that? Because you could have gone out and improved the team more. Yeah, you could have spent more to get spent more prospect capital to get a more marquee name, add a big guy to the middle of your lineup, which would help the offense. But my main takeaway in thinking about this trade deadline was that I think a lot of people see the trade deadline as the savior of the Phillies. A lot of baseball teams see it as the savior of their team. The Phillies in particular, the trade deadline shouldn't be their savior. The trade deadline, if you're a good team, is you should be adding key pieces, not creating a new team. Obviously, you can't create a new team, but you guys know what I mean. You shouldn't be making massive changes. If you're a good team, you don't need to do too much. You're trying to fill your needs. Sure, you make splash moves sometimes, but basically what I think people are expecting is the Phillies are struggling. They need to bring in this guy, this superstar, make crazy changes. But when you look at the Phillies lineup and payroll, they don't have the flexibility to be doing that. They have the fourth highest payroll in the majors. They're spending almost $300 million on this team. There's only so much that they can do. We have a lot of guys. They're just not performing the way that they're supposed to be. And that was the main takeaway as I started looking into things with this trade deadline, specifically with Harrison Bader, looking at how he fits into the lineup and everything. The main takeaway was our guys that we had before the trade deadline are not performing up to the level that they should be. So if we get that improved, the Phillies need their own guys to improve, not just bringing in whoever to be a Band-Aid solution. You need your guys that you already have to be performing to the level that they should be, and they haven't been. So let's look at this. We're back in Savant. This is, I'm just gonna explain it very briefly here. This stat is the run value, which, as you can see here, every pitch is assigned a run value based on its outcome: ball, strike, home run, etc. The sum of all players' contributions measures his overall batting or pitching run value. Positive being good, negative being bad. I feel like that makes sense. So basically, it's valuing a batter based on the results of what happens with every pitch that they see. It's the surface level. Kyle Schwarber obviously leading the Phillies. Kyle Schwarber has been the key to everything the Phillies offense has done. I don't know how they would be anywhere near where they are without Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber's been amazing. 39 run value this year. Bryce Harper, 15. Trey Turner, 10. Nick Castellanos, 3. That about checks out. You'd like more from Bryce. He's been hurt. You'd like more from Trey, but like that's still positive from guys that you're paying a lot of money to. So it's like, not great. Good, not great. Casty, yeah, not worth what you're paying him. Brandon Marsh, 0. Probably about expectations. I think we know he's not going to be an offensive weapon. He's there to be a solid piece in 7 through 9 in your lineup. So average, I'm not like mad about that. And then it's JT as a catcher. He's worse than what he has been, but for a catcher, he's not bad. It's Alec Boehm, Max Kepler, and Bryson Stott that are really bringing this down a lot. And Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos have not been performing to what they can either. Trey has good counting stats. Trey's having a much better year this year than he has other years, so I don't want to say it too much on Trey either, honestly, even though for what they're paying him, you'd want more. If I had to narrow it down to really the bottom tiers, Nick Castellanos, Alec Boehm, Max Kepler, Bryson Stott. And the reason I got to all of this is that when I was looking at run value, I was like, okay, the Phillies only have 3 guys in double digits. Trey Turner at 10, Bryce at 15, Kyle Schwarber at 39. So then I went to the Twins, and I was like, well, where does Harrison Bader drop in to this lineup? He's got 5. And if we go back to the Phillies quick, that ranks way higher in the Phillies lineup than it should. That puts him 4th. Harrison Bader should not be the 4th best hitter in this Phillies lineup. So really, the problem is the Phillies' current lineup needs to be better. They can't fix all of their problems at the trade deadline. Their guys in-house need to do better. They're not going to win the World Series if those guys that they paid a lot of money to be better don't play better. So, yes, the trade deadline is great, and there's a lot of huge moves that teams have made in previous seasons, either huge moves or moves that we didn't think were huge at the time that ended up being really important, and we didn't see it coming. There's a lot of those moves that do get made. I'm acknowledging that. But the trade deadline does not make or break your season in the large majority of cases. It impacts your team a little bit, but the majority of your team, unless you're the Twins who sold, I think, 10 players. Anyway, that's major outlier. If you're a good team that's buying, those additions are supposed to be on the fringe. Maybe you make a big move for a massive need, which the Phillies did. They made a big move for a massive need. They have one of the worst bullpens. They added a closer. I don't know what more we want from them other than get rid of the whole farm system. But again, the trade deadline should not, in an ideal scenario, be your savior, especially when you're paying almost $300 million to have one of the best lineups in the league, and they're not one of the best lineups in the league. Now, that sounded very hard on the Phillies right there. I'll wrap this with a bit of optimism because I am incapable of not doing. I think I switched that. I have to end on optimism. Yeah, I'm incapable of not doing that. That would mean I'm capable of doing it. Dang it, now I'm stuck in this grammatical rabbit hole. I'm incapable of ending a video without optimism. There we go. Got it. Anyway, I pulled this up. I was really on Savant a lot. So apologies for those of you who don't like Savant, but I think it's super helpful for contextual stats versus counting stats. I know counting stats are more familiar, but I think that these give you a nicer picture, and they're not like complicated, confusing stats. Like, they can be explained. So this one that we're looking at here is slugging percentage by team. And we're looking at the change from last year to this year. So, like, for example, the Cubs' largest change from year to year. There we go. Largest change from year to year. Last year, 393 team slugging. This year, 444. That's a plus 0.051 increase. That's a substantial increase. That is the most in the league by far. So good for the Cubs. They've had a great year. The Phillies sit at 21st, and they have a negative 0.13 difference. Their slugging from 2024 to 2025 has dropped from 425 to 412. That's not good. You don't want your slugging percentage to drop as a team. But here's where the optimism is. The expected slugging, which takes into account a lot of factors that I don't entirely understand, but it's based on how the ball is hit and how the defense is played. And basically, they factor in, under most circumstances, how lucky or unlucky you've gotten, is the simplest way I can put that. So if you've been unlucky so far this season, then you could be expected to, it's not regress to the mean. Whatever the opposite of regress to the mean is, increase to the mean, return to the mean, positive regression. I think that's a phrase, but if it is, it doesn't make sense. And the Cubs, also number one in this, in expected slugging versus expected last year to this year. But we're focused on the Phillies. The Phillies are 12th in increase in expected slugging. So, as you can see here, their expected slugging percentage is up 0.31 from last year. So there's a disconnect here. Their expected slugging is higher. It's improved from last year. They should be slugging better than they should have been slugging last year. But in reality, their actual slugging numbers are worse. So now you could go into the, like, well, that's hypothetical. They're slugging worse. Yes. But it can indicate to us that there might be some positive regression coming. They might be returning to the mean. And here, for those, if you didn't like the hypothetical luck-based expected stats, here's the real stats that are things that have actually happened. Here's my proof that the Phillies' power might be returning. In the last 30 days in the MLB, they are 4th in home runs. They've hit 37. That is the most in the National League. The American League has been hitting a ton of home runs. The Braves are 2nd in the NL with 33. The Braves and the Cubs tied for 2nd with 33. Phillies have 37. So, most home runs in the National League in the last 30 days. Now, a fair counterpoint would be they don't have a great record in those past 30 games. They're 500 in their last 40 games, I believe, month and a half, maybe 45 games. They're 500. But the power is returning. Is Kyle Schwarber carrying a large amount of that? Yes. But just that's a little optimism for you. I went after the Phillies lineup early on because they need to be better. They're being paid to be better than what they're at right now. But there are positive signs that they could improve. They've brought in Harrison Bader, who can be a big addition. Honestly, with his stats, it looks like right now he's going to be a huge addition if he keeps hitting the way that he is. But again, the end point that I had is Harrison Bader should not be that impactful of an addition to the Phillies lineup in an ideal world. He might be, the way that they're hitting right now and the way that he's hitting right now. But ideally, he's just a nice piece that is their 6th, 7th, 8th best hitter. Not a key piece that is their 4th best, which is where we're at right now. So, the trade deadline is great. Overall, I think that the Phillies did a good job. They addressed their 2 main needs. Their biggest need was bullpen. They got one of the best closers in the game, crushed it there. They got Harrison Bader, who adequately addressed their second most important need, which was a right-handed outfield bat. They could have gone out and gotten somebody bigger, but Harrison Bader will suffice, basically. If you're upset about that they didn't get somebody bigger, fine. But my counterpoint to that would be adding even a bigger guy isn't going to fix the Phillies offense. The fix of the Phillies offense needs to come from within, with their highly paid players performing better. This lineup should be better than it is right now. So they need to improve just from within. How does that happen? I don't know. But I'm not in charge of that. I'm just watching. And like I showed you guys, I think that there is some reason for hope. So I think that the Phillies did a good job this trade deadline, and I think that there is good reason for optimism going into this playoff push, and I'm very excited for it. Let me know what you guys think.